I'm going to arrange for a soil sample, and someone wants to engage somebody to build buildings on all of you. I think this is right, and just leave it.
Okay, it looks like we're ready to go. Okay. I'd like to call to order the Palm Desert City Council, successor agency to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority meetings to order on Thursday, October 13th, 2022. May we have roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Present.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Here.
Councilmember Quintanilla is absent. Mayor Harnick.
Here.
We have a majority of council present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance from Councilmember Nastandi and our inspiration by Councilmember Kelly, please.
Okay. Please join me as we honor our country and our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since we were last together, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, has been celebrated, arguably the most significant holiday in the Jewish faith. In both the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, atonement connotes a return a restoration to best practices and relationships. We also celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day, which calls us to reckon with the fact that our history has not been marked by best practices or relationships with Indigenous peoples. As we are prompted by the reflections these holidays occasion, may we be inspired to give thanks that in the city of Palm Desert, we have been preceded by many leaders who have given us a positive example of best practices and good relations between all peoples. And may we be inspired to follow their good example and build upon it as we undertake our work this evening for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on. Was there any reportable action taken in closed session?
No, Madam Mayor, direction was given, but no reportable actions were taken. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wonder if, well, let's go to awards and presentations, and then we will follow that with housekeeping remarks on how the meetings are held and how people can participate. So our first presentation is the Palm Springs International Airport Commission update. And you are unmuted, it appears, so please provide
okay.
that report.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. So let me give you a quick update on what's been going on at the airport. In broad strokes, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that Palm Springs is growing really fast, the airport. Palm Springs Airport is the fourth fastest growing airport in the nation, according to a recent report in simpleflyer.com. So there were almost 150% as many seats available for sale this October as compared to October 2019. So we are well past the pandemic dip and even exceeding our 2019 figures by a lot. The bad news that comes along with that is that in the short term, it means we're going to be dealing with a lot of growing pains at the airport. A significant part of this has to do with the past airport management and commission's approach. The management and the commission in the past took a fairly reactive approach to our growth and delayed maintenance until it was truly necessary, and new projects have been arriving too late to keep up with the exciting growth that we're having in the valley. I think probably the foremost example in people's minds, residents may have heard in the news recently about problems with the new $7 million baggage handling system, which was installed last year. KESQ has a very good detailed write-up online about what's going on there. But in broad strokes, the system is not performing at its design capacity. And even if it were, we would be projected to outgrow it sometime next year. So that's one example of how the past underinvestment is colliding with our present growth. In regard to that, I think one thing we really want people to be aware of is that if they're traveling during peak times, which is going to be starting next month, November, going basically through May, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., they're going to want to check in if they're checking luggage a bit earlier than they're used to. The airport management is recommending 2 hours prior to their flight departure if they're leaving in those time periods. So as I mentioned, the past underinvestment in the airport is colliding with our present growth, and it's actually really hitting all over the airport. Parking is reaching capacity during peak times, even outgrowing the overflow parking lot. So baggage check-in, as I just described, that's the baggage handling system. Security screening, you'll see it's very crowded in there, and I don't know if it's impacting the time for screening quite yet, but certainly your wait times to get into the screening itself is increased. It's impacting restrooms. There's challenges cleaning the restrooms during peak hours because obviously when people are using the restroom, it can't be cleaned, and the number of restrooms in the facility is not quite enough to handle our peak traffic. It's impacting baggage claim, as we talked about last time I saw you guys. So there's more flights at peak hours arriving than there is, space at the baggage claim system to accommodate the flights. So there's extended delays. It impacts rental cars, where the peak lines at rental cars is kind of outgrowing the infrastructure of the baggage claim and rental car area. Airport management is doing the best that they can with Band-Aids, and they're really they have a lot of pressure from the commission, and I think they're doing everything they possibly can. But the reality of the situation is that all these things require capital projects to catch up to current conditions, let alone to handle the future growth that we're projecting. In the long term, we do have an opportunity to use the airport to drive economic growth in the region. And so that's really, I think, what we should try to focus on. The current airport management and the commission are moving towards a more proactive approach. And so over the next 6 weeks, we're actually going to be developing the master plan, which will guide the airport's long-term future. And that probably won't get updated again for another 5 years. So now is the time, if we want to provide our perspective on the future plan for the airport, now is the time for us to provide that. A couple of things that have been on my mind in that regard. I think one really key question is we have to think about how we want the airport to get connected to the Coachella Valley San Gorgonio Pass rail corridor service project that Mayor Harnick and others have been working hard to bring to fruition. If we do nothing, we'll probably be having vehicles, cars and buses going between the rail station and the airport. But wouldn't there possibly be some more efficient solutions, for example, light rail? Another thought that's been on my mind is, how will light electric vehicles fit into the airport's future? And I'm talking about, scooters, e-bikes, and something that might be more looking like a golf cart. This is, a future that's on our horizon, and I think we should think about how those will fit into the ground transport infrastructure of the airport. And one more interesting thing to consider that almost feels a bit sci-fi is vertiports. This is a new type of of aeronautic infrastructure that would be designed to handle a new type of aircraft called an electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle. You can think of it like an electric helicopter or like a big giant drone that can carry people. This future is really happening now. The FAA has already released guidelines for infrastructure development of these types of facilities, and companies, various companies have development timelines which expect it to be widespread within 8 years. One example of a company is a spinoff of Boeing that is investing a lot, and they expect it to be widespread by 2030, these types of vehicles. Chicago already has a vertiport. Rome just opened Italy's first vertiport, and Los Angeles is thinking about this and trying to figure out how to plan for it right now. And it's something that we should probably start thinking about as well. Then the last updates that I have for you, just want to go through the recent and current projects of interest that people might want to know about, and as well the future projects which are under consideration. So recently Clear started operating at Palm Springs Airport. They provide a sort of fast track security service. Some people might have been familiar with it or already be customers who are Valley residents. We also have a new concession vendor that's being selected at the moment. Proposals have already been received. That's the concession is the food and beverage services. So the coffee shop, the restaurants, and as well the shops, like the little shop that's up at the top of the stairwell in the Bono concourse. Hopefully there'll be some local brands being represented in this new concessionaire contract. So right now they're currently in the selection process to decide which proposal will be finally selected. And then as far as future projects which are under consideration, to keep on your radar, we have under consideration is a multi-story consolidated car rental facility. It's probably a $250 million project, and it could potentially include a multimodal transport hub, which would be for kind of buses mainly, but maybe we want to think about the possibility of light rail as well.
Great, thank you so much. And I was just thinking, there's so much information that you provided, perhaps writing some of that up and then we can put it on our website would be extremely helpful for our community members.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can
Thank
send
you.
you my notes.
Okay,
There's
great.
a couple more items. Would you like to skip those, or shall I run through those real quick?
If you can, let's have brief comments. Absolutely.
Sure. So then the last 5 future projects to be aware of, they're looking at expanding the check-in area, and concurrent with that, the kind of baggage handling system and TSA screening of baggage that happens behind the check-in area. They're looking at expanding the bag claim area, creating an employee parking lot to free up space in the main and overflow lots, and covering the existing parking lot with solar generation and /shade, and potentially putting in more electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for representing the city there.
Take care.
And you too, thank you. Okay, if you notice on your agenda, it does say we will be having a proclamation for Rosemary or Rosie Casals. And we are going to postpone that to our next meeting, which is on the 27th. So we look forward to be able to present her with a proclamation and say thank you to her. At this time, we'd like to go to city manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to turn this over to Thomas Soul to bring the council up to speed on a couple of initiatives that he has been working with some resident committees on. So Thomas, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Because I would like to give you a little update on the 50th anniversary. I'm excited to share with you the 50th anniversary logo, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background on that. We've been working with Idea Peddler and the marketing committee on this, and the logo that we settled on was unanimously chosen by the marketing committee. And to help, there we go. To give you a sense of what they were looking for as we chose this logo, they looked at some different criteria. They wanted to make sure we used Palm Desert colors. They wanted a clean design. They wanted it to be easy to reproduce, have some fun energy, and something that tells a story. We were especially helped by Erin Scott, who works at the Living Desert. They having just gone through a 50th anniversary, they have some experience with 50th anniversary logos. So she was particularly helpful with us in selecting the logo that we settled on. And this is the logo that they chose, celebrating 50 years of Palm Desert. You'll see there's several colors here. We'll be using it in a variety of colors in different applications, different places. We're going to be using these on banners, on El Paseo. They'll be on social media headers, on our email signatures, and on lots of different places. And the first place that you're going to see this will be on our 2023 calendar, which will be celebrating 50 years of Palm Desert. And we're going to be unveiling that at the Concerts in the Park on the 27th. And speaking of that, we have several events coming up, mostly Concerts in the Park. So tonight is the very next concert in the park with the Blue Breeze Band. They're playing a variety of music from Motown, R&B, jazz, funk, and soul. I want to remind everyone these concerts are free, so they can bring their lawn chairs, blankets, and picnic baskets to each of the concerts. Tonight we have 2 food trucks out there for people, including the Comfort Inn and Big Easy Sandwich, and always our favorite E.E. Pell's truck. The concerts are from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And the next one will be next Thursday, October 20th. The Dreamboats are back. And then on the 27th, we wrap up the series with the Pop Rebels, taking us back to the 70s, which is right in line with our historical calendar that we're going to be unveiling to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And then one last reminder, on October 30th is the 58th annual Palm Desert Golf Cart Parade. It'll be on Sunday, October 30th. Tom Flores is going to be the Grand Marshal, and the parade steps off at noon, but people can enjoy food, the kids area, classic car show, and vendor booths, and a lot more starting at 9 a.m. on that day. And as always, for more information on events in the city, people can visit discoverpalmdesert.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other additional comments from the city manager?
That is it tonight. Thank you.
Just on the heels of the reminder of the golf cart parade, don't forget that it kicks off with a pancake breakfast every year also. Okay, we will move to the council member reports and requests at this time. Council member Kelly, why don't you go first?
I will go first, and now we're ready for the person who will go second. I have nothing to share this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nistandi, please.
And thank you, Mayor. And I do not have anything to share this evening as well. Thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill.
Oh, well, I just have a very little. And we finished today a strategic planning session with the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership, looking how we go forward and make sure we're serving our entire region, each city, and our tribes as well as possible. And I did want to mention that the Paint El Paseo Pink was an amazing event. I know they always guesstimate. I don't know what their last guesstimate of attendance was, but I know it was somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. And it was really a great event. It was wonderful to see the community come together to help others. So as usual, I know we all attend a lot of meetings, we all do a lot of things, but we want to report those things out that we feel will mean the most to our community members. So at this time, why don't I have our city clerk provide housekeeping remarks for participation in this meeting?
Thank you. For those on Zoom, if you want to participate in public comment, please click the raise hand button on your computer or smartphone. If you're joining the meeting by calling in on your phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please keep your minutes or your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and begin by stating your full name for the record.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will move to public comments, non-agendized public comments at this time. And I do see that Yvette Edens has her hand up, please. And if you can provide, kind of keep your, share with us for 3 minutes or less, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Harnick, members of City Council and city staff. My name is Yvette Edens, proud resident of Palm Desert and Executive Director of Desert Cancer Foundation. On the heels of a very successful paint, El Paseo Pink, and your guess was spot on. We're guessing close to 2,000 this year. I do want to publicly thank all of you for your support of the walk and this wonderful organization. We appreciate your generosity to allow us to host this event in our beautiful city and on El Paseo. Paint El Paseo Pink is a really beloved community event. It helps raise awareness for breast cancer and much needed funds for Desert Cancer Foundation. And we could not do this without our community partners, and we're honored to host this walk in Palm Desert. We're delighted to have you, City Mayor Jan Harnick and council members attend the walk as well. And as you saw, again, participation was really outstanding and filled with inspiration and hope. So your valued partnership and the support of our friends on El Paseo, our sponsors, healthcare partners, and media partners really enable us to shine a light on our work and raise money to help individuals who otherwise could not afford access to care and vital cancer treatment. So on behalf of our board of directors and event committee and staff members and volunteers and the residents we serve, we are really grateful for your support. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Palm Desert City Council members. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for choosing Palm Desert to have this event. And thank you for all you do for people across our valley.
Thanks so much, Mayor.
Big difference in a lot of people's lives. I know that. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to comment on a non-agendized item? And I don't see anyone at this time. So we can move to the consent calendar, and all matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one motion. The public may comment on any items on the consent agenda within the 3-minute time limit. Individual items may be removed by the City Council for a separate discussion. And I see our clerk, which makes me—
Yes,
think.
Madam Mayor, staff wanted to request to pull item 1I for a brief presentation related to the wind fence around vacant parcels.
Okay, great. So we will get to that, and consent items held over. Are there any items that the council would like to pull or make comment on? I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan's hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull item E as in echo and item G, golf.
E
Please.
and G.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to move the balance?
I make a motion to move the balance.
Okay, and is there a second?
And
Okay, can we have a roll call vote for consent?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Calendar?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
yes,
Councilmember Nastandi,
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, we'll take the pulled items in order. So can we start with item E, which is to approve the amendment number 1 to contract number C41690 with HR Green Pacific, Inc.
Thank you, Mayor. And I see Mr. Seha, if I may proceed with just a few brief questions. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Seha. How are you?
Doing great. How are you, Mayor Pro Tem?
Excellent. Thank you. So, three quick questions. Number one, what exactly does on-call support services mean in this context?
So the contract with HR Green is both for our development services and public works teams. And so the on-call services that they provide us primarily relate to staffing as well as engineering services. So right now they're supplying us with some temporary staffing needs that we have. They're doing some engineering plan check review for us. I'm also assisting in our permit center.
Okay, thank you. Question two, with regarding to the permitting and plan approval process and so forth, I know in the past, the city has received complaints along the lines that instead of having all questions and concerns presented to the applicant at one time, it's very much a lengthy back and forth. One item is resolved only to be told, okay, now we have another item. Have we made any progress on that issue?
Substantial progress, not only with our internal staff, but particularly with the HR Green contract and their turnaround times when it comes to plan check review.
So our customers are happier.
That's right.
Okay, that's what we want. And then finally, we're looking for an amount not to exceed $590,000. This is probably my annual question. Has staff looked at this in terms of, is it still cost effective to contract out these services rather than hire up staff?
We did look, and yes, it's definitely more cost effective at this point. The market for the engineers is extremely thin right now. We have been out at least 2, if not 3 times in the recruiting areas, and it really does turn the balance of these contracts positive when we start looking at what we're having to pay internal staff that are fully loaded. So it makes a lot of sense, especially as we're trying to fix the customer service part of our operation and long-term benefits. So the benefit of a contract like HR Green is it's scalable. So we use it when we need it. And we simply couldn't, I don't think we could staff it anymore internally for cheaper.
Thank you. I appreciate you and staff being on top of things as always. Thank you for that. Madam Mayor, I'm prepared to move approval of that item at your discretion.
Right, and I would second it with just a quick comment. I have heard a lot of very positive feedback about the process engaging HR Green. So I think that's really been an asset in our work with our applicants. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
And I'm sorry, I don't know who the second was.
That was me.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Great. Now we'll go to G, appointment of City Council liaison to the Civics Engagement Committee. And did you want to ask questions, or how would you like to go about this, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions would be good. Again, I just have a few quick questions. And I think, Mr. Mejia, you are the staff member assigned to this. Is there, question one, is there a meeting already scheduled for the Civic Engagement Committee?
I don't believe the meeting's been scheduled, but they are looking to hold their first meeting at the end of October or the beginning of November.
Okay. And just for clarification, I couldn't understand what's the purpose in appointing just one member at this point?
If you would like, I'd answer that, because that was a decision I made. Because going back to a discussion we had earlier about elections, we don't know who will be elected and on our council. And in fact, one of the serving members on that committee is a candidate as well. So I thought it was probably going to be most efficient, most effective if we waited until election results were in so that we could make the best decision at that time.
And that was really my question, Mayor, and I'm not arguing, I just want to understand, does it make more sense to postpone the first meeting and the appointment of the two appointments till after the election?
I'm not going to speak to, does it make more sense? But as our city clerk said, it may be the first of, in the beginning of November. So I would recommend that we wait, as long as we're saying the beginning of November till after the election. I was very confident in asking Councilmember Kelly to be our appointed liaison, for the reason that we will have a new council member. And I was hoping that with the new council member in there, that council member Kelly would have ample opportunity to model the behavior that we expect from our liaisons to committees and commissions. She represents the city well always. And as you know, sometimes the position of liaison is a little tough to find your way. And I think Councilmember Kelly always does a great job with that. So I thought it was really a good opportunity to onboard a new council member under the tutelage of Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, and just please understand, I have no opposition. In fact, I have 100% support for Councilmember Kelly's appointment. I just didn't understand why we're appointing one and deferring the second one instead of just deferring the first meeting and the two liaisons and all that till after the election. But I would certainly defer to your wishes, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do see Councilmember Nastandi's hand up.
Well, it's probably a moot point now, because I just wanted to underscore that I'd like to move forward to appoint Councilmember Kathleen Kelly to this committee, and then after the election, go from there. But it's already been said, so seems like we're all in agreement.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, great. Now we'll go to item I, which is receive and file an informational item related to wind fencing around vacant parcels, but it's going to be more than a receive and file. So please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Andy Ramirez, Deputy Director of Public Works, and joining me today is Ryan Gaylor. And we wanted to provide you just a quick update on the wind fence policy that was requested of staff back in August of 25th. And then also to provide another update on the North Sphere wind fence project. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. Moment here. And I'll be sharing it now. Can you see my presentation? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, as a quick background, earlier this year, the city did experience some high winds that have not been experienced here in the city for several years. And we noticed the effects of that prohibited travel in the North Sphere areas, especially on our streets. Several locations were identified to implement a wind fence project. And back on August 25th, the council awarded a contract to furnish screened wind fencing. And so I wanted to briefly review the criteria that was used by Public Works to identify this need. And as you can see on your slides, safety was number one, and obviously a nuisance. City workers typically returned to the same areas multiple times throughout those months. And so there was a lot of inefficiency of time. And so this is the criteria that was used for the 7 locations that were identified for this project. As a quick update, here was the map that was used in that presentation. And a pre-construction meeting was recently conducted. And so we're happy to share with you that construction is expected to commence at the end of this month. Also, on the 25th meeting with City Council, there was a request to review the current policy for installing wind fence. Staff did some research with Air Quality Management District, also referred to as AQMD, in regards to the regulations. We consulted with the city attorney as well, and we assessed past and current practices. So the big question was, what is the AQMD policy to enforce fugitive dust requirements on vacant parcels? And so after conferring with AQMD, they stated that they will not cite the property owner of any undisturbed vacant lots due to fugitive dust issues. On our next question, we took it to the city attorney for their legal opinion on requiring property owners to submit an in lieu fee or install wind fence around undisturbed parcels. The city attorney determined that the city cannot cite the property owner of undisturbed vacant lots due to fugitive dust issues. On this next slide, we wanted to make sure that you're aware that there's no written policy regarding the installation of wind fencing to protect a city right-of-way. However, as the previous slides have shared with you, our current practices. In addition to this, in regards to development, where there's a development that's under construction or where a project has been approved and there's going to be active grading, the city does require for the installation of fencing around a project site with wind screening. Going to the undisturbed parcels, as you can see on your screen, the city really doesn't have any authority to require fencing. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to share that with the council. Our current practice is supported by AQMD, regulations, and legal counsel. We do require active developments to install the wind fencing. This next slide right here is an overlay of our projects in the city, particular to the North Sphere, that are under construction, have been approved or under review. In addition to that, in the black, you'll see the wind fencing project that will be underway at the end of this month. So just for information's sake, we just wanted to share the color scheme here. The blue areas indicate development projects under construction that have wind fencing installed per the city requirements. Future areas, so this is here colored in green and salmon or pink. And so the green areas indicate projects that have been city reviewed and approved when fencing will be required prior to grading. The groundbreaking for these areas is expected to occur sometime within 2 years of the approval date. The salmon colors indicate projects under city review and have not yet been approved. There is no wind fencing required until grading commences, and there is no estimated time frame when development will commence. Therefore, the green and salmon locations will be addressed with wind fencing on the right-of-way on a case-by-case basis.
Andy, on that last slide, what's the salmon colored parcel at the very northwest corner?
You know, let me ask Ryan to address that.
Is that west of Monterey, adjacent to the Costco, or do I have the streets wrong?
No, that's right.
What's planned there?
If I could, Mayor Pro Tem, this is Martin. Yeah, that is a large parcel that is privately owned and has contemplated a large master plan that has included some commercial, some light industrial, and I believe some residential as well.
Oh,
it is adjacent to the Costco Center to the west.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. And here on this last slide, we have a simple recommendation before council, and that is to direct staff to prepare a resolution for adoption establishing an official wind fence policy. And that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I see. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff. I think that there's been some inconsistency in the application of our policy in the past, and I'm so grateful that we've clarified our policy now and into the future, and I would move for approval of staff recommendation.
I will second that. I want to thank you because I know we had a lot of questions about that when that came up before. We recognized the need for the fencing and also need for policy. So I thank you for bringing that forward and taking care of that for everyone. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we will now move to the action calendars, but we are going to have to change the order of some of the items on our calendar or on our agenda. So if we can take public hearing, the first one, A, we will take that now, and then we will go back to the action calendar. So the public hearing is to adopt, public hearing A, adopt a resolution under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and approve a precise plan, tentative parcel plan map, and environmental assessment for the development of a 241-unit multifamily affordable housing development, a housing density bonus and related improvements on a 10.49-acre parcel located at the northwest corner of Gerald Ford Drive and the extension of Technology Drive. So may we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. If you give me 1 second, I am having a bit of technical difficulty with my presentation.
Yeah, I already saw my yes. I hope he stays away because you're both foolish about it and both want to jail. He doesn't care about people, and so now I won't do one of other things. Might be the rule all either. Money changes people. And now the next case. All parties in the matter of Riley versus Saraceno Weiler. Therefore, Melanie White is suing Carla owner Bob.
Madam Mayor, are you looking at my presentation now? Yes, perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Rosie Lua, Planning Manager. Good evening, City Council. Today's presentation is for the Palms Villas at Millennium project. The vicinity of this project is located north of Gerald Ford, east of Dinah Shore, and west of the Technology Drive extension. And as you can see here, this parcel will be joined with a 0.49 acre existing parcel that is closer to Dinah Shore. So it will be a merged parcel. There will be access from Technology as well as access from Dinah Shore. This parcel is part of the Millennium Specific Plan. You see the 10 acres here. The other sliver portion will be from parcel 9. This is a Millennium Specific Plan that was approved in 2015. It had an environmental assessment, as well as this planning in area 8 was planned for affordable housing. So for your consideration tonight, it is a recommendation for tentative parcel map to subdivide the property into 2 parcels, as well as a precise plan to develop 241 affordable housing units. It'll be built in 2 phases, and it also includes a density bonus with a parking reduction, and also a CEQA finding that this CEQA analysis is in conformance with the general plan. So the project is 241 apartment units. 239 of them are affordable, and they are restricted affordable. 2 units will be for on-site manager. There is a density bonus component to it, which increases the density from the PR22. The parking reduction is part of the state density bonus as well. As you can see here, this parking reduction, as required by the zoning, is 2 spaces per unit, and it will be reduced to 1.41 spaces per unit. There is a maximum lot coverage as required by zone of 50%, and the proposed has at 20% lot coverage. There is a maximum of 3 stories as required by the code. This project has a 2-story component, which is the clubhouse, and the majority of the buildings are 3 stories. And again, they are under the zoning allowance for maximum height. A bit of background, the ARC recommended approval of this project with comments on April 12, 2022. Those comments were addressed prior to heading to Planning Commission for an approval. On August 16, Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council. They had some concerns with the project. One was recreational use of retention basins, wanted the applicant to incorporate that recreational portion if allowed. And so the applicant was to assess that, as well as for staff to have a discussion with Sunline to see if there were any proposals for any future lines on Gerald Ford, as well as for the applicant to go back to their right-of-way areas and see if there could be a future location for infrastructure, as well as the applicant to incorporate some sort of water feature, pool, or more amenities onto the project. So also part of this project, there was a community engagement. They started their community engagement on March 31st. There were some items that were raised by the public, which included environmental items, including noise, air quality, things like that. The building architecture comments, as well as some general questions that came up with the applicant. There was a follow-up meeting on July 27th, where concerns including this project having proximity to services, concerns on the building architecture being plain, as well as this project's distance to schools and services, as well as a concern of the neighbors that this project had a lack of amenities. So to address the public comments, we put together just a proximity to schools. This project does fall under the Palm Springs Unified School District boundary. And so we assessed just the proximity of mileage to the elementary, middle, and high school, as well as the schools within the transportation that is provided by these institutions. So again, there is the transportation component for elementary and middle school. There is no transportation component for the high school. In terms of services and stores, this is, I think, a larger issue that was brought up, that the area is not in walking distance or in close proximity to any of grocery stores or services. But I think that this was also part of a larger discussion that not only affected this project, but others in the Northern Sphere that were discussing about having more of these services come into the community. And so staff did go back and look at our commercial areas for that, as well as, one of the things that we did see was that there was some close proximity to some services, including the DMV. In terms of responding to the amenities, which was a concern of the public as well as Planning Commission, this project originally did not include a pool. It included only a tot lot, a half court, as well as some barbecue areas. As part of the feedback from the public as well as Planning Commission, the applicant has revised their plans to include an amenities package. And I have provided this in black or white, but you can see that there is some reconfiguration from the original plan. And this is for consideration of approval today and a condition of approval. There is a tot lot that has now overhead structures, a pool, as well as a maintenance building that will serve 4 bathrooms as well. There is overhead structures over the barbecue areas, and also there is walking paths And the applicant is also exploring walking paths along the retention basins, and that will take further analysis to ensure that that takes place. I will revert back to the original plan here, but again, this is the area that has those changes. As mentioned, there are 2 accesses, one on technology. It is a gated community, go in, and then there is a second exit onto Dinah Shore. This is the project in its totality. Again, as mentioned previously, they are broken up into 2 phases. This is the phase line for phase 1. And then the second parcel is the phase 2. As you can see, that it will have frontages that will be completed all the way to Dinah Shore. And this is following the phasing line. So this is what we will be seeing built first. Again, this will be revised to include the new amenities package. This is the project in its entirety as far as the 2 parcels. And this here is phase 1 with an interim connection, vehicular connection onto Dinah Shore for phase 2, as you can see here. So again, there will be improvements along Gerald Ford that will connect to Dinah Shore for pedestrian connections. However, phase 1 is what's being proposed for construction, which will take place more immediate than the phase 2. As far as the architecture, this is a community building. It is a Spanish style themed architecture. This is a 2-story component of the project. This is the residential buildings. Again, these will have, these are 3 stories. We'll have solar carports. They have stairs. There are no elevator portions to this project. This is the design theme of Gerald Ford, as well as the monumentation signs and entry points. And that concludes the staff report. I am here for any questions that you may have. The applicant is also available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is the time if council members have any questions for staff. Are there any questions? Okay, I see a couple hands. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
I'm happy to go second. Councilmember, no? Okay.
You were first, that's fine.
I was first. Okay, I missed that. So, Ms. Lua, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I'm wondering, how big is that pool? Do you know?
Sure. It is a, give me 1 second. It is a 38 by 24. 38 by 24 feet.
Right. Did, I mean, I don't know, 230, 241 units in total. Might be 300 to 400 kids. Did staff explore the feasibility of a larger pool or a second pool?
We had strong recommendations of the applicant to consider a larger pool. Yes, but you know, this is the applicant's response to our recommendation.
Okay, I'd like to, at the appropriate point, I know this is a public hearing, just ask the applicant if that a bigger pool or a second pool would throw this completely out of whack financially, or if that's something, a gift he can make to the community, if you will. So Mayor, I don't know when that question can be asked, but I'd like to do so at the appropriate time.
Okay, after we open the public hearing would be appropriate time. In the meantime, Councilmember Kelly, you have any questions for staff?
I do. One of the concerns that was expressed in all of the work from members of the public was a perception that the city is concentrating affordable housing in the north part of the city. This has come up in the past. We discussed it when we approved the housing element. I think the last chart I saw showed a total of 35 affordable housing complexes of varying sizes located throughout the city, which many people are unaware of because we've insisted on such a high standard that they don't look different from market rate housing. Do you have any other statistics you can share or numbers you can share to help folks appreciate that we do have affordable housing dispersed throughout Palm Desert?
Absolutely. And I think Jessica Gonzalez can give us a really good indication of all of our existing properties that are spread throughout our city. Do we have Jessica?
Or we can hold that question until, oh, here she is.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, we actually have a good spread of units and providing housing in different communities throughout our city. We have over 1,000 units in the Palm Desert Housing Authority portfolio, with majority of them in the south and between on Santa Rosa between Fred Waring and 111. We also have an additional probably approximately between 400 units that are dispersed throughout in the eastern and western side of the city boundaries as well. So we have a good amount, close to 1,600 units throughout the community of the city of Palm Desert in the southern side of Frank Sinatra down to past 111.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions of staff? And I see none. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. And if the applicant would like to make some remarks, please. And
hi, this is Dan Horn. I'm president of Palm Communities, and I want to thank staff for their presentation, and I want to thank the council for taking the time to hear this, hear the presentation and hopefully support our project. In regards to the pool, we originally didn't plan one due to a number of reasons that we went into with staff regarding insurance and the drought and water shortage and things like that, and maintenance, particularly out in the North Sphere with the sand issues that they have. That said, they were very strong in their position, and so it was planned out at the size that was put into the plan. I don't know, what size is appropriate for the number of people that we are having. That's something I haven't looked into. But if the council wants us to look at enlarging the pool, I'm happy to have my staff and my architects sit down and go through it with the city staff and come up with a size that is affordable and appropriate for the size of community we have.
okay, is that the extent of comments from the applicant?
I think so. We've spent a lot of time going through this, just about every aspect of this project, and I'm comfortable that we're moving in the right direction, and whatever other questions are out there, can be resolved between now and the near future to satisfy the council and the city. We would appreciate your approval this evening because there is a funding round coming up that we want to submit to at the end of this month. And that's necessary for the development of the project.
Thank you. And I know Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, you did want to discuss that. Did that answer your question, or do you have further discussion and questions on that issue?
No, I appreciate the applicant's openness to creating a larger pool. I think we have a very good partner that specializes in aquatics in the YMCA, and I think YMCA National can probably provide a starting point for determining what size pool might be appropriate for the expected population there. However, I also understand cost constraints, and I'm very grateful that we're getting this project in the city of Palm Desert with so many additional affordable housing units. So, Mayor, I think I'm comfortable with the applicant's suggestion that he continue working with staff and see if there's a way to better accommodate the people that will live there. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions of the applicant? I have just a quick question, and you Mr. Horn, you brought up a good point regarding the wind issues that do exist out there. What type of wind barrier do you have to help with keeping the pool as usable as possible?
Right now, we have a block wall on the north side. I believe it's an 8-foot wall because of the sound situation from the freeway and the railroad tracks. We're going to have some, a building in between as well as, the tot lot. So that should help. I can tell you this, that we do have a community in Thousand Palms that has got a pool, and we're cleaning it constantly to keep the sand out of it. And it's an expensive and repetitious issue that we're going through on that because it's like this property facing some open desert. But that said, if that's the way that the city council wants to go, it's my job as a developer to make sure that you're happy. I've tried to do that with my existing community, and I try to do that in all the communities we develop in. So if your goal is to have a pool, we'll have a pool, and we'll give you one that'll accommodate the size population that we've got.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I do see Councilmember Nastandi's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Horn's comments, and it really does resonate with me. And I've been following this project for several months now, and it is much appreciated, your openness and willingness to make things right. There have been a few bumps along the way, but you have really tried to work with staff, the community, and us, and it's much appreciated.
I missed all of it.
I'm sorry. You're not muted, Mr. Horn. So go ahead, Councilmember Nastandi.
Oh, yes, Mr. Horn, I was just saying how much appreciated it is in your willingness to work with the community. You've listened. There have been a few bumps along the way, and you've done everything that you can to try to make things right. And I just really appreciate your willingness to work with the community, city council, and staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Nastandi. I appreciate the faith and confidence that you feel and the council feels in our company and myself. We definitely try to keep our supporters happy for the long term, and I appreciate your confidence. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions of the applicant? Okay, I see none. And we do have an open public hearing. So is there any members from the public who would like to speak to this issue? And I see none. So I will close the public hearing and open it, reopen for discussion. Are there any comments from our council?
I will move to approve the listed actions in the staff recommendation with the understanding that the size of the pool will be further explored with staff.
I will second the motion.
And I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan has his hand up. We have a motion and a second, so please.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I also want to thank Mr. Horn. He's an individual and a company that is very experienced in developing affordable housing. And I'm grateful that he chose Palm Desert, the city of Palm Desert, to create his next project. I'm looking forward to adding to our inventory of affordable housing in the city of Palm Desert. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments? I see none. I know we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. All right, we will now go to the action calendar, which is.
Mayor, could we take a brief 10-minute break?
Yes, we can. Yes, we may. 10 minutes, and I have 5:09, so I'll see everyone back at 5:20, please. Okay, it's 5:20. So now we'll go back to the action calendar, which is A, joint consideration for approval, and we have everybody here, yes, for approval of actions related to the conveyance of the parcels identified as APN 694-120-028 and a portion of APN 694-120-029, and approving loans in the aggregate amount of $6,755,000 from the Housing Authority's Low and Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund for the construction of 239 affordable housing units and 2 managers units pursuant to a disposition, development, and loan agreement. This is a joint item between the Housing Authority Board. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, if I could please have a minute to share my screen.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council and Authority Board, Jessica Gonzalez, Housing Manager in the Economic Development Department. Before you, the approval of staff's recommendation will provide an approval of a resolution that authorizes a disposition and development and loan agreement between the Palm Desert Housing Authority, the City of Palm Desert, and Palm Communities. The disposition and development and loan agreement provides terms and conditions in which the conveyance of a city-owned 10.49 acre property would be conveyed. The conveyance of the property will be in 2 phases, consisting of 241 total units. Each phase 1 will consist of 121 units, and phase 2 will consist of 120 units. Each phase will provide an on-site manager unit included within the total. The Housing Authority would be providing a loan commitment in the total amount of $6,755,000. The loan assistance would be provided in 2 amounts. For phase 1 would be $6 million, and for phase 2 would be $755,000. Both of these loans will carry a simple interest at per annum, simple interest 3% per annum, sorry. As part of the conditions of the disposition development agreement, loan agreement, you also have conditions of housing agreements. One is the density bonus as well as the low mod housing agreement. Each of these will be provided for each of the phases. They must be recorded and will not be subordinate to any deed of trust. In other words, these would survive in the event of a foreclosure and would not be terminated. The conveyance will only be only upon successfully having funding obtained by the developer. The conveyance will be per phase and they will be subject to satisfaction of conditions of closing. Phase 1 must be funded and closed by June 30th, 2024. Phase 2 must be funded and closed by June 30th of 2025. This essentially provides the developer 2 rounds of application towards the CDLAC allocation applications. Phase 2 land would not be sold unless phase 1 is sold. So essentially, if phase 1 is successful, then we would move on to phase 2 conveyance. The benefits of conveyance and financial support will provide us with, of course, a 100% 241 unit community that would be operated for 55 years. The project will serve our residents with the highest need of housing need, which would comprise of extremely low, very low, and low. It would also meet our RHNA numbers for the existing cycle, the 6th cycle for our housing element. And we would be provided 231 units as proposed in 2 phases with a total of 72 units for extremely low, 121 units under very low and low, and 46 units under low income. Again, just a summary of the recommendation. before you is to approve the conveyance of the city-owned 10.49 acre property in 2 phases, approving loans in the total amount of $6,755,000 from the Housing Asset Fund for pursuant to the DDLA for the purchase and construction of 239 units as affordable, restricted for 55 years for extremely low, very low households. It also authorizes Palm Communities to submit applications for financial allocations. And it authorizes the mayor or our chairman, staff and legal counsel to execute and record the agreements pursuant to the DDLA. Staff is available as well as KMA. KMA is our consultant that has provided some technical assistance to ensure that the loan assistance being provided from the Housing Authority was feasible, and they have presented that it is warranted. And our legal special counsel, as well as the developer, are available for any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or yes, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Gonzalez, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Hi. So, and I apologize if I should have asked this in advance. You may or may not be able to answer this, but I'm wondering if it were to be the will of the council, could a requirement be placed in the DDLA that at the discretion of the city, of the council, up to 5 units in this development would be made available to the city or to CDAG or some other entity's homelessness program. So in other words, it wouldn't mandate it at this point, but it would make them up to 5 units available. And I picked that because it's 2% of the project. It would be a place marker where at future city council's discretion and request, up to 5 units would be made available for a homelessness program. Is it legal? Is it possible to build that into the DDLA? And again, I'm not saying that's the will of council. I preface it by saying, should it be the will of council? Is that a possibility?
Actually, can I ask our city attorney, Mr. Hargraves, if he could assist me in that answering that question, if it could be something we can add on?
Well, the DDLA is the result of a lengthy process of negotiation. So it's not something we can unilaterally impose necessarily, but if that was the council's choice, I mean, we could we could say that the city's not going to enter into it unless the developer agrees. And I think the developer's probably, Mr. Horn's probably in attendance, so we can get feedback on that and see if he'd be amenable to that. So it'd be something, you know, that we could add. I don't know how it would affect the financial analysis, but yeah.
And I'm sorry, I should have clarified. This would be at the rate of rent that would be charged to any qualifying tenant. So the idea is that, you know, there's funding coming through and it's expected to continue to provide funds for rental units for the homeless. So that's what I mean, whether the city has a homelessness program, CDAG, or some other entity that wishes to pay the appropriate rent that any tenant would be charged that qualifies for low-income housing, but just that it be set aside with that preference. So I just want to clarify, I'm not looking for a handout from the project. They would continue to receive the same revenue that they otherwise would.
I think there are probably certain mechanics that would have to be worked out as to whether there would be just 5 units that would be reserved and not otherwise rented, or how those 5 units be made available and how would those people be selected and how would they fit in with the community. But there again, I would leave, I mean, that's a point that can be negotiated, and I would defer to Mr. Horn on that. So, but if that's the council's, you know, desire, and given the amount of money that the council, the city, the housing authority is putting into this project, it certainly wouldn't be inappropriate to have that discussion.
Before we go to Mr. Horn, I'd like to go to Councilmember Kelly.
I have a different question, so I won't pursue that topic until later. Ms. Gonzalez, I think a staff presentation to the council back in June indicated that entitled and projects in the entitlement process fulfilled most of our RENA allocation for the next cycle, with the exception of 47 very low, extremely low units and 141 low units. Does this project cover that gap, or was this project included in the analysis as one of the projects in process?
This project was already included as one of the ones in process.
Okay, I suspected that. I just wanted to figure out how much we have to celebrate.
Okay, Councilmember Nastandi, please.
I think my question is more directed towards Councilmember Jonathan. So Councilmember Jonathan, if I understand correctly, you just want to see if it's a possibility, but to not hold up us voting on this tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can address that more directly during the discussion phase, but my question was to ensure that it even is an alternative for us to consider. And I think I'm hearing staff and legal counsel say, sure, it can be negotiated as part of the DDLA. So whether this council wants to do that or not, I'm happy to address during the discussion part of this agenda item.
I think it will be good to hear then from Mr. Horn, right? I see him back on the
Well, now he's dropped, I think, dropped his hand. So are there any other questions? Okay, I do see Mr. Horn's hand is up. Yes, if you'd like to answer that question. And you are muted.
Thank you. The issue with dealing with homeless usually is structured up front because of the services and the unit type that you need to accommodate that population. When we do homeless, we've got projects, we've got probably a dozen projects at this point that include some portion of homeless in them. But the issue that we're running into is that we've got a financing round coming up. And if we don't get assigned and don't get site control tonight, or maybe in the next, I don't know about the next meeting or not, but we will miss the funding round. And that could put us back and push this project back a good 9 months to a year in being able to apply for tax credits. The sweet spot for homeless as a percentage of the population, you have to have enough units for homeless to be able to accommodate a full-time social worker that can deal with that population 40 hours a week. You have to have an agreement with a social services provider to provide those services, which is there's a fee for that. So the process, we're a little far down the line, to be honest with you, in the process of entitling and developing this project to be able to inject a homeless population at this time. We've just gotten a project approved in Wildemar. It looks like it's going to get funded with tax credits. That's got 40 or 50 units of homeless in it out of a 240 unit project. or 225 unit project, I beg your pardon. And so we're not opposed to it, but it's just, the timing is very, and the place that the agreement is in right now is, it'll be problematic for us. We actually did back in 2008 and delivered in 2010, the first Mental Health Services Act community in the county of Riverside. And we've been doing special needs projects ever since then and have a good relationship with service providers between here and Reading to accommodate that population. But it's got to be thought out in advance, and it's got to be planned on in your financing stack. And we're a little far down the line to be making a move in that direction at this time.
Thank you. And I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, you have your hand up again.
Thank you, Mayor. It feels like we're talking apples and oranges. And Mr. Horn, I want to make sure you understand my question. What you described, like in Wildomar and other places, is very, very different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about permanent supportive housing for the homeless. This is for people who have successfully completed treatment, and neighbors don't know that they're in or out of a homelessness program. So the care that individual has received at that point and continues to receive is not provided by the project or by the development. From the development standpoint, from the neighbor's standpoint, it's just another resident. Nobody knows otherwise, and no one is affected. The project, Mr. Horn, would not be affected from a revenue standpoint because rent would be paid by the program that the individual is under, whether that's the CARE program, the city program, a CVAC program, or some other entity. So I'm not envisioning a shelter or homelessness campus. I'm just asking if a few of the units can be reserved, if you will, or made available should a future council make that request. Does that make sense, Mr. Horn? Are we understanding each other?
I understand what you're saying. All the communities that I'm talking about are permanent supportive housing. They're not excuse me, they're not shelters or transitional housing. And to accommodate that population appropriately and to keep them from, going back onto the street, you have to provide services. The program that we try to model off of was a program out of New York that they implemented, and the study started in the mid-90s and went on for 5 years. And the way that we try to do it is to keep the population at 20% or less of the total population to be special needs. And when I say special needs, it can be Mental Health Services Act people or homeless or vets. There's a number of classifications of special needs. And the recidivism rate in the traditional route where they do not blend them in and don't have services is about 50% within 5 years. The recidivism rate for the programs that we've been implementing are about 15% at the end of 5 years. So I'm familiar with trying to do what you're talking about, and we've got those projects in Thousand Palms and, if I'm not mistaken, and in Moreno Valley, and a number of Menifee, and a number of other areas outside of the county. But the services, you have to have the services, or you will end up having social issues. That's not to say that you're going to be keeping the same population in there all the time, meaning that they may move on to and outside of the program if they get stabilized well enough. And that's always the goal, is to move my tenants up and on versus, trying to say that they've got a home forever in this particular community. You want them to progress. And that goes for the special needs tenants as well.
Okay, I see that Councilmember Kelly has a hand up for a question.
My hand is up for discussion.
Okay. Can I do this real quick before we go to discussion? I would like to open it, see if there's any public comment before we go to discussion. So let's see if there's any public comment whatsoever, and I don't see any. All right, so let's go to discussion. Councilmember Kelly, please.
And Ms. Gonzalez had her hand up also. I don't know if she had some quick information that would be of help to us.
I actually was going to ask to have our special legal counsel be elevated to help us maybe answer some of the questions our council member Jonathan had with regards to the homelessness option.
Okay.
If you want, we can wait for that until you comment.
Let's see where we go. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, I applaud your vigilant desire to make sure that the city of Palm Desert plays its part, and probably in an outsized part, because that's our tradition. When it comes to supporting the CFAG homelessness program and the impending care program from the county. My perception is that to achieve your goal, we as a city need to start by doing our homework to get input from folks like Mr. Orn of the sort we've received tonight, to fully assess the best and most successful way to step up and do what you're inviting us to do. The issue requires research about possible resources which can be deployed most successfully and which, quite frankly, would create the smallest risk of diverting housing from other populations who need it just as much. There's a good chance that every single applicant for this housing is quite close to homelessness, perhaps a paycheck away from homelessness. So as part of that research, we have to make sure that we're not diverting resources from another equally deserving and needing population. I don't think we can shoehorn this goal into this project at this late date without going into all of the upsides and downsides. There's one issue that's just a clincher for me. And that issue is that this prospect has not been identified through all of the public input sessions. If we allocate property to this purpose, we want to make sure that we're upfront about that in public input sessions, that we hear people's concerns and that we alleviate those concerns, quite frankly. I think we would disserve your goal if we shoehorned in something here that was not a part of the public input process, because it would raise people's temperatures. they wouldn't have had the opportunity to express their concerns and have those concerns resolved. So my bottom line is go get them, hang on to your issue, but let's channel that into some comprehensive research into what the potential resources are and which can best be deployed for that purpose. For tonight, I can just hardly wait to vote yes, and to know that we're on the path to making 72 units available for extremely low income, 121 available for very low income, and 46 for low income. And that these units are going to help to prevent homelessness for hardworking people who aim to be constructive parts of our community. So that's where I come out.
Councilmember Nastandi, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, you make some really great points, and I take your points to heart, and believe on the next affordable housing project, we should look into doing what you're suggesting and putting some homes aside, some apartment homes aside for the homeless population. And just segueing on what Councilmember Kelly said about how we didn't have this as part of our community outreach, that part is valid. But the other more pressing issue as well is, as the developer said, time is of the essence now. We need to get this project approved by the end of December, and we're just too far along in the process to make changes on this particular project. So I'd make a motion to approve. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second and a hand up. So Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I can count, and listen, the last thing I want to do is jeopardize this application in any way. Councilmember Nastandi, I appreciate your comments, and especially your suggestion that we move forward with at least looking at this option on future projects. I don't quite understand the lack of public input process. I thought that's what we're doing right here, right now, but okay. But Councilmember Kelly, I do understand your concerns. Those concerns and arguments against creating affordable or housing for the homeless, and thousands of other arguments against creating housing for the homeless have been made and heard. And at the end of the day, that means no housing for homeless. We have residents who want to see our homeless population off the street. We have businesses that want to see our homeless population off the street. And we have compassionate people that want to see the homeless people off the street. Folks, there's only one way to get homeless people off the streets. You can't put them in jail. You turn around and come back to the streets. You can't kick into another city, because we don't do that. The only way to get homeless people off the streets is to get them a home, to get them housing with wraparound services. I will say, I thought this was kind of an easy sell. So there goes me being naive again. I think it got convoluted into something complex, and I probably just didn't sell the point well. The suggestion was not to create some kind of a center with services. This would be for permanent supportive housing for formerly homeless individuals who are under a care program, receiving resources. So I'll just say, I hope that a future council, as Councilmember Nastandi suggested, looks at this option, because folks, we're not going to solve homelessness until we provide housing. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there anybody else who would like to comment, discuss before we go to a roll call vote? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harding.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we are now going to ping pong back to a public hearing. And that will be B, approve 5 power purchase agreements with Forefront Power for the Civic Center photovoltaic project, project number 77-14. And who will be providing that staff report?
Good afternoon or good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Andy Ramirez, Deputy Director of Public Works. Before you is a recommendation to approve a resolution for the proposed photovoltaic improvement project and approve power purchase agreements with Forefront Power for installation of solar systems at City Hall, the Parkview Office Complex, the Aquatic Center, the Artists Center, and the Desert Willow Academy. And before I move on, I would like to share with you that representatives from the Joint Powers Authority, SPUR, Forefront Energy, and BB&K are also available during this presentation. As a brief overview, this project meets 3 of the City Council's priorities under energy and sustainability, which include being a responsible steward of the city's natural resources, reducing per capita consumption of energy, promoting greater usage of more sustainable materials, discouraging waste, increasing renewable energy production, and also encouraging all new construction to be net zero energy and design. As a result, in 2021, the City Council requested that staff assess the current status of our renewable energy resources and increase our investment in energy efficient initiatives. This led to a citywide assessment of our current photovoltaic system. Staff confirmed that the current PV system was not optimal and was in disrepair. Therefore, Public Works sought to identify a solution to improve the functionality of the city's entire photovoltaic system. This slide highlights a timeline of the photovoltaic system assessment and work that has been completed. Briefly, during the spring of 2021, staff evaluated a statewide competitively bid solar procurement program conducted by SPUR, a Joint Powers Authority consisting of 300 plus public agencies. The JPA selected Forefront Power as best qualified and lowest bid. Fall 2021, right after the project was initially presented to the City Council, the California Public Utilities Commission came out with a proposed decision which would have negatively affected the economics of the project because the payback rate of the solar energy to Edison would have been decreased. After several months, though, the CPUC received direction from the governor's office to modify the proposed decision and make it more favorable to the solar industry. A final ruling is still imminent. By the fall of this year, Public Works and Forefront completed the bullet points shown on this screen. In addition, staff took an extra step to verify the economics of this project by conducting a comprehensive technical and financial analysis by SAGE, an independent engineering firm who are experts in this industry. Further, legal opinion was provided and a review of the agreements by BB&K. Both firms confirmed this project to be reasonable. Today, staff is recommending that the council proceed with power purchase agreements with Forefront Energy to implement an energy saving project at 5 locations, which will be outlined later in this presentation. Briefly, a power purchase agreement is where the city enters into an agreement with a third party developer, in this case, Forefront, who installs, owns, and operates an energy system on city property. The city will then purchase the system's electric output for a 20-year period. And as a result, the city receives stable, low-cost electricity with no upfront cost. In this next slide, entering into a power purchase agreement or 5 power purchase agreements because of the 5 locations with Forefront, there are many benefits to this that the city would receive. For one, the city would not incur any upfront costs for the construction of the photovoltaic improvement. There are no rate increases over the life of the 20-year contract with purchasing solar power from Forefront. The savings of the federal tax credit is then passed through in this particular scenario to the city. And then all operations, I just want to emphasize that, all operations and maintenance for the system is handled by Forefront, which ensures optimal performance. After 20 years, the city will have the option to conduct an appraisal of the system to consider purchasing the assets or extending the agreement or terminating the agreement. As you can see on the chart to the right of your screen, the chart demonstrates a 20-year period of savings under this PPA. The city will realize a reduction in Edison Electric billing while paying a stable PPA payment. The city is poised to save over $2.3 million over 20 years. And then the formula that we used assumes an increase of 4% in Edison rates each year. Now, please note, Edison rates over the past several years have ranged between 4% to 12% annually. So our projected savings for this project, providing savings to the city, is quite conservative. At this time, I want to hand over the remainder of the presentation to Ryan Gaylor, our Senior Project Manager, who will detail the 5 photovoltaic locations, including infrastructure readiness for 18 future electric vehicle charge stations.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. First location we want to look at is here at City Hall. The system is going to include 4 carport canopy structures, and it's sized at 470 kilowatts. The improvements here will include a conduit for future electric vehicle charging stations, and it'll accommodate 10 vehicles at a time at this location. Next slide is the parking lot at the Parkview Office Complex. There's going to be a single carport structure here that's sized at 180 kilowatts. The improvements to this site will include a conduit for EV charging stations that'll accommodate 4 vehicles at a time. Next slide is the canopy at the Aquatic Center. This is a 345 kilowatt system, and the structure, since the last time we presented this project, we shifted the structure away from the date palm grove so that the work here won't disturb the grove. In shifting the structure to the east, we're able to preserve 50 date palms at this location. A structural will provide a shaded recreation area that could be used for a walking path and picnic tables. If necessary, the area under the structure could be converted to additional parking. And if that was to happen, there's conduit available for 4 EV charging stations there. At this location, the system is expected to provide 100% energy offset for the Aquatic Center. This next location is we had 2 new locations, and this is the first of 2 new locations. It's at the Entrada del Paseo area, and this is a 133 kilowatt system. This is a location where the city recently renewed a 5-year lease with the Artists Center. And so any effects from this contract that may affect the tenant will be addressed. And the intent here is that the tenant will receive a prorated share of the benefit of the savings over the term of their lease. The final site, this is a new site as well. This is at the Desert Willow Academy just off Portola Avenue. It's going to be a 266 kilowatt system that's supported by 3 canopy structures. There's Public Works spoke with Derek White of Desert Willow, and he supports this location for carports. Next slide. This graph, if you look at the graph on the bottom, it demonstrates that the cost of power initially increases over the first few years with this program. However, the PPA rate that the city will pay for power coming from the PV system will remain constant over the 20-year term of the agreement. So as SCE raises their rates from anywhere from 4 to 12, even more percentage points per year, the city will still be paying a flat rate for the power that we obtain through the PPA. So the savings on this project don't come from a cheaper initial power rate. The savings come from paying a locked-in rate that doesn't increase over time. In the next slide, this shows some details about each system individually. All the locations fall within the desired range for energy offset, which is between 90 and 100%. Total system size for 5 locations combined is almost 1.4 megawatts. It also shows that the total estimated savings is around $2.4 million. This again is a conservative estimate. We expect to receive more than that on the basis that Southern California Edison rates over the last 3 years have exceeded 10%, and our projection is at 4%. One of the other benefits that can be seen on this slide, but I want to focus on the fact that this project meets the goals of the City Council priorities. Solar provider is responsible for the design, construction, and O&M for this system. We don't have the staffing levels in-house to properly maintain all the components of these systems, so it'll be nice to have the solar provider on hand to maintain the system in accordance with the contract. In addition, Forefront has agreed to use local labor to construct the systems, and this project will provide shading parking for about 300 vehicles. The next slide. To conclude, the city benefited from a partnership with Spur. They're the JPA that helped us out. They issued their RFP statewide, and they selected Forefront Power from the most qualified solar companies in the state. We contracted with Sage, who's an expert in the field of structure and PPAs, to go over the agreements with a fine-tooth comb. In addition, BB&K provided an expert to look at the agreements from a legal perspective. With this project, time is of the essence. The program that Spur used to set up to assist us with acquiring renewable energy solutions, it's set to expire later this month on October 26th. In addition, the CPUC decision is looming, where if their decision goes through, it'll make these projects economically unviable. Staff is recommending that the City Council make a finding in the public hearing that this project will result in net savings over the life of the contract and approve the power purchase agreements with Forefront Power. I'm available to answer any questions, and we have representatives of Spur, Forefront Power, and BB&K available to answer questions as well.
Thank you so much. So this is the time for questions of staff, and I see Councilmember Nastandi, your hand is up.
Thank you. And this question is maybe for Mr. Gaylor or for the Spur representative. This project almost seems, or this contract almost seems too good to be true, that I'm thinking there must be a catch somewhere, because to have no escalation clause over the whole term means there's no inflation trigger, or there isn't any loophole that our costs truly stay the same. So I wanted to confirm that. And then I'm trying to understand how Spur actually makes money then. They're going to be selling they must be assuming we're going to produce excess solar that they're going to take and then sell. So that's my second question. And what happens with the CPUC at the end of October that would make this not economically feasible?
Actually, I would like to have Spur take care of these questions.
Okay, what I'd like to do, if I could, is see if there's any more questions of staff. And I see Councilmember Kelly, your hand is up. Is this a question for staff?
It's a straightforward question for Spur also.
Okay. So, you know what, then let me go ahead and open the public hearing so that the applicant can have questions asked. So we're going to open it now, and then the applicant can answer your questions and provide any input they may need. So Councilmember Kelly, why don't you go ahead and ask those questions?
Yes, I'm curious to know roughly how many projects Forefront has done through participants in the Spur JPA, because a track record is always a good thing.
Hi, hello, this is Kevin Flanagan. I am a representative of Spur, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Would you like me to go ahead and answer those questions in the order they were asked?
If that's most convenient for you, absolutely.
All right, great. I'll do my best. And thank you for having us here tonight. I really appreciate it. I think the first question was about the PPA rate, and I think the phrase that was used was, "This seems too good to be true." It is really a great program, the way that this has been structured. It is true and correct that the PPA rate will not go up over time. It is fixed and flat. And the city is only obligated to buy the power that the system produces. So if these systems don't produce and perform, the city is not obligated to buy any of the energy in the contract. There's also a performance guarantee. So if these systems don't produce the number of kilowatt hours that they're supposed to produce in a year, that means that the city has to go out and buy more energy from Edison. And so the contract has a mechanism in it where if Forefront, the vendor, doesn't perform and produce the number of kilowatt hours that they're supposed to produce in a given year, they actually have to pay a penalty to the city. So it is a good program. Your understanding of the program is correct. And I'm glad that you see it as a good deal. I think the next question was, how does Spur benefit from this? So Spur is a joint powers authority. So we are a public agency that was created by other public agencies. And our sole mission as a public agency, as a JPA, is to develop piggybackable buying programs that help public agencies reduce utility costs. So we have over 300 public agencies in our membership today across the state, representing thousands of facilities. So we're a very large organization with very large buying power. The members that are in our JPA don't pay a membership fee. The way that all of our buying programs work is that there is an administrative fee tied to the use of any of our various programs. And we stipulate that administrative fee in the competitive solicitations that we conduct. So for example, for this particular program, the REAP program, and this is sort of consistent across all of our programs really, is that we try to structure our administrative fees so that it's around 2 to 3% of project cost. And that project cost, like I said, is stipulated in the RFP documents. And any public agency that utilizes the REAP program master contract, Spur earns an administrative fee from the winning vendor of the program. And so those administrative fees are really kind of how we as an organization generate revenues to cover our overhead. We don't have a tax base. We can't levy taxes or pass bonds. And so that's how we operate as an organization. I think there was a question about the Public Utilities Commission and the proceeding that's going on there regarding net metering. Really, what Ryan said is that time is of the essence here. What the Public Utilities Commission is doing is revising the net metering rules for projects like this, as well as other projects on residential systems as well. The new program rules that they're going to be rolling out are going to be less favorable for solar projects. The good news, though, and this is really the thing that staff has been focused on, the good news is that there's a mechanism whereby the city can be grandfathered on the existing net metering program, which is favorable for solar, and that grandfathering will last for 20 years, which, by the way, matches the term of the PPA. And so that's really the goal here, is to get the projects approved and then secure that grandfathering through submittal of an interconnection application to the utility in advance of those rules changing. And so that's really the goal here, is to kind of get ahead of those rule changes, preserve the favorable rules for these projects, and lock in the savings that you've seen presented to you tonight. And then the last question, I think, was, what is our track record? And I'm really glad you asked that. It's something that we're really proud of as a JPA. So the REAP program, the master contract that you would be piggybacking as a part of this resolution, has been used by over 61 other public agencies across the state. So it's been vetted by staff, vetted by legal, vetted by procurement over 61 times by other public agencies. And in many of those public agencies, multiple phases of projects. So other public agencies include school districts, community college districts, cities, counties, as well as the state of California is using the REAP program to procure some projects for some of their facilities. So 61 public agencies at hundreds of sites across the state. So there is a strong track record there. And this is definitely not, you're not a guinea pig trying something new. This is a tried and true procurement vehicle for solar projects for public agencies in the state.
Okay, thank you. Council members Kelly and Nestandi, do you feel you had your questions answered? Okay, I see Mayor Pro Tem's hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't know who wants to take my questions, whether it's staff, Spur, or Forefront. So I'll just ask him, and whoever wants to respond, feel free. I'm trying to get my arms around the legal and contractual relationship here. We just heard from a representative of Spur, that's the JPA, but JPA contracts with Forefront Power. Who is the city of Palm Desert contracting with?
City of Palm Desert is going to be contracting with Forefront Power as well. Sam, you have more to input? I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, good evening, council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and it's great to meet you all. My name is Sam Zanzinger. I've been working with the city since the beginning of this in early 2021. I think it's important, Councilman Jonathan, that we clarify our relationship. It's a great question. So the city will be contracting for these projects with Forefront Power, the solar developer. Spur is the joint powers authority that ran the statewide competitive process. We were selected as the winning provider in that RFP, and the relationship with the city and Spur is that the city is leveraging the competitive process to procure these.
Okay, and just to close the loop, the city will not have a direct relationship with Spur, right? Because I don't see that we're being asked to join the JPA. Is that correct?
That's correct. You, as the city, are an eligible member to participate in the program, but you do not have to join Spur to benefit from the program.
Okay, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm just saying in tonight's action, we're not addressing that, and we're certainly not joining the JPA.
That's correct.
So under the contract, and it's a 20-year contract with Forefront, correct? Among other responsibilities, Forefront has a responsibility for the O&M, right? Operations and maintenance of the grid.
That's correct.
So I certainly don't want to cast aspersion on Forefront. If staff believes in you, I believe in you. But 20 years is a long time. What happens under the contract if Forefront goes away, and companies fail every day, as you know? How do we handle the O&M if Forefront is not there to do so?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just a little bit of background. Forefront Power is a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called Mitsui. They are a massive multi-billion-dollar energy conglomerate, multinational company. We're an A-rated parent company. So we have a really stable parent company that has a really robust balance sheet that ensures that we're going to be able to honor the term of the contract. But it's a great question, the operations and maintenance of the system. So contractually, we have an obligation to obviously meet a certain level of production every year. And that's, if we miss that, as Kevin from Spur mentioned, we have to make the city whole. In the event, in a crazy, unlikely scenario, that Forefront were to go out of business, there are step-in rights with our financing parties to step in again, take over the contract. They're going to have the same obligations under our performance guarantee as Forefront would. So again, the commitment and continuation of all of the terms for O&M would be maintained
voluntarily by those other entities in the event of failure.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
There's no legal obligation for anyone else to step in should Forefront fail, correct? I mean, there may be other entities, I heard you say, that have the right or ability to do so, but they're not obligated to do so. Is that correct?
So the financing parties have made a massive investment into the infrastructure of these projects. And in order to make themselves whole, obviously, we want to see these systems, they will want to see these systems perform. And so, they do have they do have the incentive obviously to step in and make these projects whole.
Okay, I mean, I understand your rationale that a lot of people want this to succeed. What I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if it doesn't, worst case scenario, Forefront fails and there's no one there to replace the O&M obligation, and the city would somehow have to contract that out or take care of it itself or whatever. As I understand it, there's no guarantee or bonding of operations and maintenance services from Forefront, from this proposed contract. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it because of that. I'm trying to get a clear understanding. So is that understanding accurate?
So your question is whether there's a contractual obligation for someone to step in and take over the obligation to meet the production and maintenance. Is that right?
Sure.
So
I do see our city attorney's hand up if you'd like to just say
Just,
this.
and I'm not that familiar with the details of the contract, but the primary obligation of the contract is the city pays for the electricity. So if these things aren't being maintained, then the city stops paying basically, and whoever financed this thing, takes a big hit. So that's the incentive. The real incentive for the maintenance is that if they're not maintained, they don't produce, the city doesn't pay, right? So it's kind of like a lot. Anyhow.
No, I get all of that. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it because of this. I just want to be clear that that is a calculated risk, right? And if 5 years hence, Forefront fails and nobody steps up to the plate, then we're stuck with whatever the electric rates are at that time. We're no longer getting the projected benefit of $2.3 million or even higher. That's all I'm saying. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, and I'm hearing that's correct.
Hi, Glenn. You looked at this from a legal perspective. Could you weigh in?
Yeah, actually, I mean, if there's a bankruptcy or a default, what is going to happen, just based on my experience and having seen much smaller providers fail, is the lenders do step in because they don't get their financing back unless they get paid over the long term, and they will step in, they will take it over, they will sell it to another energy company who will then have to come in and do the O&M.
Okay.
So that's what's most likely to occur.
Are they contractually obligated to do so?
They're not contractually obligated.
Okay. That's all I needed to know.
Yeah, but if they don't, there are termination rights. So we could terminate the agreement. We could require the system to be removed. We could potentially buy out the system at that point and operate it ourselves if we felt the system was still in good shape. It was just a matter that Forefront, through bankruptcy or some other reason, was not operating it. There are remedies. As you pointed out, though, there's no guarantees under a contract. So if everybody kind of went south on us, there's the possibility that we would have to kind of start over with a new provider. But what would most likely occur is the system would degrade over time, and we would not be getting the same amount of energy we were expecting. And while that's occurring, we would likely be terminating this agreement and going out and trying to find a new provider to come in and either take over or provide a new system.
Thank you, Mr. Price. I appreciate that clarification. Final question should be a lot quicker. And you brought it up, Glenn. In the event that the city cancels the contract with Forefront, or in the event that we reach the 20-year termination of the contract, who has responsibility for removing the grid, the structure, should the city wish to do so?
If the city does not exercise its buyout rights or does not exercise renewal terms, which are available, then Forefront does have the obligation to remove the system.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hargreaves, your hand is still up. Is that just not taken down, or it was just not taken down? Okay, is there any further questions for the applicants? No, or any discussion? Would anyone else like to speak to this item, either in opposition or support? And I see no one, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Now, though it seems like we just did this, how about some council comments? Are there any comments? Any discussion?
Well, I would make a motion to approve if there's no discussion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, I will second it. And looks like Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan has some discussion, so that's great.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Excuse me, I did want to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought it was just a second, please.
It's a speaking second. I want to, in the strongest and most enthusiastic terms possible, commend staff from the top to the bottom, each and every person who has worked on this, because it's been a source of frustration to council members for some time. That we have non-functioning solar on top of some of our parking structures. And I so appreciate the research to identify Spur, which has connected us to a substantial track record. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan has asked all of the worst case scenario questions, which is helpful. For me, what's most helpful is to know that this is working well for 61 other public agencies. So again, I so appreciate the research to get past initial obstacles, get past maybe initial opportunities to really bring to us a well thought out approach.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, I completely concur, and a huge shout out to staff for so imaginatively and creatively putting this forward. My favorite part of all this is that the carbon-free power that we as a city will be using, anything that we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help the environment and Mother Earth, I'm 100% for. So staff, thank you. Great, great job. The reason for my questioning is that I think hopefully we'll do more of this in the future. And if so, I think it's important to have an exit strategy because worst case scenarios do occur and we don't want the city holding the bag if we can avoid it. With developers, we use bonding. I don't know, I think Spur can be helpful. They seem to have vast experience. If other cities or entities have addressed this concern, maybe we can piggyback on their solutions. But I would never let that fear of a worst case scenario stand in the way of what we're doing here tonight, which I think is tremendous. Staff, thank you again. Great job.
I could just jump in really quick to maybe add to that point. I've done a lot of these for a lot of public agencies and cities, and there really is no scenario I've seen where an agency is required bonding. And the reason for that is the bonding would then go into the rates. And so that would definitely increase the cost of your energy. So I feel that the way the industry looks at it is the risk is low enough that it wouldn't justify the increase in rates that you would incur as a result of that kind of bonding. I also just wanted to interject quickly that we need to have the council first make a finding about the determination of the cost savings, as has been kind of reported in the staff report, and then move on to have a motion to approve the agreements. And that's required under Government Code 4217, which is the procurement mechanism that we're using to approve this.
Yeah, I understood Councilmember Nastante's motion to embrace both. Do they have to be done separately?
I would recommend they be done separately because it's a requirement of the Government Code. So just so there's no technicalities, I recommend we do two separate motions.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the 5 power purchase agreements with Forefront Power for the Civic Center photovoltaic project. number 777-14.
Could I suggest that what's being suggested, if we look at the recommendation paragraph, is that we start by moving item 1.
Item 1, okay.
And then we can move item 2 and 3.
There we go. So I will follow up with adopt a resolution finding that the projects will result in net cost savings to the city over the life of each 20-year contract, and that the projects are statutorily exempt from CEQA evaluation. So we're going to approve number 1 first. Is that correct?
And Mr. Price, that satisfies the government code.
Yes, it does.
Okay, and so we have a motion and a second on that. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we'll go to the second motion on this item. And Councilmember Nastandi, did you wish to make that?
Okay, I make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the power purchase agreements for photovoltaic systems at the Civic Center, Parkview Office Complex, the Aquatic Center, Entrada del Paseo, and the Desert Willow Academy. Furthermore, authorizing the city manager to negotiate non-monetary changes and clarifications in the agreements in consultation with the city attorney as may be required to carry out the intent of the agreements.
Second.
Okay, great. And we have a motion and a second. So before we go to vote, I just also want to thank the staff across the board. I know there were so many minds and hands in this process, and you know how important it is to the council and for our community members. So I want to thank you all for your efforts. So we do have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Are there any additional comments that anyone would like to make? I'm going to make one really quick. Go see the artwork in the roundabout on Mag Falls. It looks outstanding. So everybody have a good evening. I see no other unfinished business. Meeting stands adjourned, and we'll see you back October 27th. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.